The United States government spends over $20 million a year telling you to drink milk. It appears in every school lunch program, every dietary guideline, every food pyramid for the last 70 years. Milk is presented as the most natural thing a human can consume. But roughly 65% of the human population cannot properly digest milk after childhood. The majority of adults on Earth, in East Asia, West Africa, the Middle East, and among most indigenous populations, produce almost no lactase, the enzyme needed to break down milk sugar. For most humans, milk is biologically inappropriate after age 5. The story of milk is not a story about nutrition. It is a story about a genetic mutation, the empires it built, the populations it excluded, and one of the most successful and most deceptive lobbying campaigns in the history of the food industry. All mammals, including humans, are born able to digest milk. They have to survive infancy. But in virtually every mammal species, lactase production switches off after weaning. That is the biological default. Continuing to drink another species' milk as an adult is, evolutionarily speaking, bizarre. Around 7,500 years ago, in the grasslands of what is now Hungary and the northern Balkans, a single genetic mutation appeared in a small population of early cattle herders. It kept the lactase gene switched on into adulthood. These people could drink fresh milk without becoming violently ill. The survival advantage was enormous. In a world of periodic famine, access to a living animal that produced a continuous supply of calories, fat, and protein without slaughtering it was transformative. Carriers of the mutation survived famines that killed their neighbors. Within a few thousand years, the gene had swept through European and some East African and Middle Eastern populations. Etymology bomb. The word milk traces back to the Proto-Indo-European root, melg, to wipe or stroke, the motion of milking. The same root gives us emulsion. Every time you say the word, you are describing an ancient hand gesture performed at dawn beside a prehistoric cow. Here is the paradox. Humans were keeping cattle and processing their milk thousands of years before the lactase persistence mutation became widespread. How? They couldn't drink fresh milk without severe consequences. The answer is fermentation. Cheese and yogurt convert most of the lactose into lactic acid during the fermentation process. Even lactose-intolerant people can eat aged cheese without symptoms. Early herders were not drinking milk. They were transforming it into something their bodies could handle. The oldest direct evidence of cheese-making, pottery shards from Poland dating to 5,500 BC, with milk fat residue filtered through the clay, exactly the process used to strain fresh curds. Cheese is older than the wheel, older than writing, older than bronze. The legend of cheese's discovery, a nomad crossing a desert carrying milk in a pouch made from a calf's stomach. The rennet in the stomach lining curdled the milk in the heat. By evening, he had solid curds and liquid whey. Whether the story is true or not, the biochemistry is exactly right. The lactase persistence mutation spread with the people who carried it. Indo-European herding cultures who expanded out of the Pontic steppe around 3000 to 4000 BC, sweeping across Europe, Central Asia, and into South Asia. They brought their cattle, their languages, the ancestor of most European and South Asian languages today, and their ability to drink milk. Migration and genetics shaped the map of the modern world. The Mongol Empire ran on milk. Mongol warriors could sustain long campaigns partly because their horses provided a continuous food source, fermented mare's milk, kumis, high in calories and mildly alcoholic. An army that carried its food supply on 4 legs was nearly impossible to starve out. Milk was a military technology. The colonial nutrition doctrine. British and later American colonial administrators in Africa, Asia, and the Americas promoted cow's milk as the universal marker of a complete diet, despite the fact that the majority of the populations they governed were lactose intolerant. Milk was not just food. It was a cultural weapon, a way of labeling non-dairy consuming populations as nutritionally primitive and in need of Western guidance. The calcium myth takes root. By the early 20th century, the idea that cow's milk is the essential, irreplaceable source of calcium for human bones had become nutritional orthodoxy in the West. Despite the fact that populations consuming little or no dairy, Japan, China, most of sub-Saharan Africa, had perfectly healthy bone structures and in some cases lower rates of osteoporosis than heavy dairy consumers. The U.S. dairy industry spends roughly $500 million per year on marketing and lobbying, one of the most aggressive agricultural lobbying operations in American history. The Got Milk campaign, launched 1993, is one of the most successful advertising campaigns ever created, now recognized as a masterclass in manufactured cultural necessity. The food pyramid scandal, internal USDA documents, and later academic research revealed that the placement of dairy as a separate, mandatory food group in U.S. dietary guidelines was not primarily driven by nutritional science. Dairy industry representatives sat on the committees that designed the guidelines. The recommended 2 to 3 servings per day had no strong independent scientific basis. It reflected the industry's production capacity and lobbying power. The Harvard conflict. In 2001, Harvard School of Public Health publicly broke with USDA guidelines, stating that the evidence did not support dairy as a mandatory component of a healthy diet, and that the guidelines appeared to reflect industry influence over public health policy. It was one of the most significant public challenges to official U.S. nutrition advice ever made by a major academic institution, and received almost no mainstream coverage. The school lunch machine. The National School Lunch Program requires milk at every federally funded school meal in the United States. In schools where the majority of students are lactose intolerant, predominantly Black, Hispanic, and Asian American communities, children are legally required to take a carton of milk they cannot digest in order to receive a subsidized meal. A government nutrition program is systematically providing an inappropriate food to the populations most likely to be harmed by it. The same playbook as sugar. Internal industry documents obtained through litigation have shown that dairy industry research programs in the 1970s and 80s produced studies designed to defend milk's health claims, fund friendly academics, and discredit independent researchers who raised concerns. An almost identical strategy to what the sugar industry used to suppress research linking sugar to heart disease. The modern dairy cow produces roughly 10 times more milk than her pre-industrial ancestor, achieved through selective breeding, artificial insemination, hormone treatments, and a production cycle that keeps cows almost continuously pregnant. The average commercial dairy cow is spent and slaughtered at age 4 or 5. Her natural lifespan is 20 years. Scale shock. The U.S. alone has approximately 9 million dairy cows. Global dairy cattle produce more greenhouse gas emissions annually than the entire aviation industry. A glass of cow's milk generates roughly 3 times the carbon emissions of any plant-based alternative. The antibiotic crisis. Routine antibiotic use in dairy herds to prevent mastitis, udder infection, endemic in high-production industrial cattle, is one of the largest contributors to antibiotic resistance globally, a public health threat the WHO has described as one of the greatest dangers facing humanity. The milk in your glass is part of a drug resistance chain. The plant milk market grew from virtually nothing in 2010 to over $20 billion globally by 2023, the fastest growing category in the food and beverage industry. Oat milk alone went from a niche Scandinavian health product to a mainstream global commodity in under a decade. The dairy industry's response. Lobbying campaigns in the US and EU to legally prevent plant milks from using the word milk on their packaging. An acknowledgement, dressed up as a regulatory concern, that the competition had become existential. The irony of oat milk. Oats were historically the grain of the poor, the food of Scottish peasants and Irish farmers, too destitute to afford wheat. The cheapest, most dismissed grain in European history is now the fashionable, premium alternative to the product that once symbolized prosperity and civilizational advancement. Precision fermentation. Biotech companies are now producing casein and whey proteins, the functional proteins in dairy, through microbial fermentation, without a single cow involved. Animal-free dairy products chemically identical to cow's milk are already on shelves in some markets. The 7,500-year relationship between humans and cattle may be approaching its end. Milk is a genetic accident that became a civilizational force. A mutation in a handful of Bronze Age cattle herders spread across half the world, built empires, shaped languages, funded one of the most powerful lobbying machines in history, and ended up in a carton on your breakfast table, backed by 70 years of government-endorsed nutritional advice that was partly written by the industry selling it. The majority of people reading this right now, statistically, have a body that was never designed to drink the contents of that carton. And for 70 years, no one in authority thought that was worth mentioning. If this changed what you'll think about the next time you open your fridge, subscribe. There's a lot more history hiding in the things you were told were good for you.